You can now support Ghost Maps on Patreon. Simply look for We Are HANTU or click the link in the description. Inspired by an account from Elwin. Ghost Maps, entry 129, Seletar, Singapore. Our second round of drinks for the night arrives. Another taping for Brian, another yen yang for me. We're at a coffee shop in Bedok, where he's sharing 3 stories with me, all of them set in a camp in Seletar. He's already shared his first, a story that had horrible consequences for Brian's BMT lieutenant, James. This second one's not so sad, he says. He's smiling easier now, a few minutes after relating that tragic account. He takes a sip of his drink and shakes off the last of his cobwebs. I ask him if he's sure he's ready to continue, and after a split second's hesitation, he reassures me that he is. So, I switch my recorder back on and ask him to start from the beginning. The number 2359 is a familiar one to lots of national servicemen. It's the hour at which many of them have to book back into their camps after an evening or weekend out. If they happen to stay close to camp, they might head home for dinner with their family on weekday nights. Brian wasn't so lucky. His family lived little more than an hour away from his camp. Still, he made the best of it. "I'd take the bus to North Point for dinner," he says, referring to the relatively nearby neighborhood mall. "I tell you, when you're in NS, even the worst civilian food still damn shook." He says that he would normally go window shopping after, or even watch a movie if he had enough time. One thing he never did, though, was spend the evening with his campmates. "I saw enough of them during the day," he says. "I just wanted quiet time by myself." Whatever his evening plans, he always returned to camp just before 11:55. The bus that he took back stopped right outside the camp's gate. From the gate to his company line, it was a 15-minute walk, taking him down a road lined with many tall trees. This road had street lamps along it too, but only just enough to light the way. And Brian very rarely encountered any campmates who were heading back at the same time. Considering his previous experience in this camp, walking down this lonely, barely lit path might have made him uneasy, if not for 2 things. Firstly, he would sometimes purposely tire himself out. "I usually did this if I had a busy day and knew the next day would also be quite jalat," he says. "But I would still want to go out, so I window shopped until I was damn tired and went back to camp and knocked out." On those nights, his own exhaustion was enough to keep the fear at bay. The other thing that distracted him? Birds. They were these migratory birds roosting in the trees, and they shat everywhere, man, he says. The whole place stank. It was these birds, however, that led him to encounter an unearthly but familiar figure while walking back one night. It was a Sunday. Brian had alighted the bus at about 11:30. It was a chilly evening with a gentle breeze. and after a whole weekend's rest, the weather further refreshed Brian as he made his way down that familiar road. He was still looking forward to a good night's rest, of course, but he was also alert enough to be aware when the birds in one tree started to make a ruckus. At first, he thought they were just fighting amongst themselves. That happened sometimes, but they were never this loud. Brian shook it off and continued walking until, over the stink of bird droppings, he caught a whiff of Frangipani. Brian didn't want to look up. He knew he wasn't going to like what he saw. But not knowing was somehow worse than seeing whatever was up there, he says. The birds had taken flight. He could see that they were not flying towards the next tree or the one after. They were trying to get as far away from that tree as possible. Standing on one of its branches was a woman in white. She wasn't perched on the branch. She was just casually standing there. And this made it all the more terrifying for Brian. He couldn't see her face. Her long hair was covering it. But he somehow knew that she, thankfully, wasn't paying attention to him. He was caught in uncertainty at that moment. Should he run? Would that capture her attention? But if he just walked briskly, would he risk her eventually noticing him anyway? He opted for the latter at first. He started to pick up the pace, marching in time with his rapidly beating heart. He passed the next tree, and then the next, and the next. But then he heard the birds in one of the other trees behind him start to squawk loudly. I didn't know if she was following me, he says, and I didn't care. He burst into a sprint. He didn't think it was possible, but his heart was somehow beating even faster. He would have screamed if his lungs weren't already on fire. As he reached his company line, the orderly on duty asked him why he was running. Need to use toilet, he had said to Brian, chuckling to himself. Hesitantly, Brian paused and looked back. He couldn't hear the squawking of the birds anymore. He wasn't sure when exactly that had stopped. The trees that he had just passed weren't shaking with activity, just swaying in the cool night's gentle breeze. He turned back to the orderly. Yeah, he said, his eyes still darting around. Yeah, I need to use toilet. I ask him if he ever saw the lady in white again. He tells me that he did, several times. You know what's funny? He says. I'm almost 100% sure she did notice me all those other times. She just didn't care. Brian never ran from the gate to his company line again, even if he did hear the squawking from the trees. He only picked up his pace and kept his head down. And every time he reached the company line safely, he always made sure to mutter a thank you. I ask him if he's ready to tell me his last story for the night. He smiles and tells me that he is, then finishes his drink and waves the drink stall auntie over again. "One last order first, okay?" he says. I nod, and as the auntie reaches our table, we place our orders. Another round of taping, and yin yang. If you want to discover more of Southeast Asia's other side, subscribe now and follow us on social media. You can also be one of our supporters on Patreon. Look for We Are HANTU or click the links in the description. Ghost Maps is a HANTU production created by Kyle Ong and Wayne Ray, with art direction by Jolene Lim, and recorded on Audio Technica mics.